So. All right, we're live. All right, I'd just like to take a minute before the chairman kicks off the meeting. We have two new members sitting on the board tonight. We have Deandra Sunner and George Schneidmeyer Waller. Sorry, George. Thank you and for your time and your volunteerism. So we appreciate you being here. We have four here, so we can kick off with the opening statement.
Thank you all for being here this evening. This is the City of Charleston Board of Zoning Appeals site design, June 4th, 2025. Present currently are Kelvin Yuji, Jeff Webb, George Schneidmuller, and Deandra Sunner. Present from city staff, Eric Schultz, Allison Craig. Always forgetting. I got it. These proceedings. Yes, I got it. Okay. Yeah, so these proceedings are being recorded. We ask that those who speak identify themselves for the record. We will conduct this meeting in usual fashion. We will first receive information from city staff about the application and their recommendation. If the recommendation is favorable and no one objects to the application, the matter is uncontested. The board reserves the right to ask questions of staff, applicant, or others in attendance prior to rendering a decision. If, however, the city recommends against the application or there is opposition to the application, we treat the application as contested and hear from the applicant and anyone else in favor of the application. Next, we hear from anyone opposed, followed by a short rebuttal from the applicant. We then close the public hearing portion of the meeting for that particular application and open the discussion to the Board of Zoning Appeals members only. We will then make a decision to approve with conditions, deny, or defer the application. Board of Zoning Appeals site design has the authority to do three things. 1, hear appeals to decisions of the zoning administrator. 2, grant special exceptions to fact-finding function of the board. 3, grant variances to the zoning ordinance if the application meets the hardship test outlined in section 54-924 of the ordinance. The board may deliberate, make a final decision on a matter by a majority vote of members present at the hearing and qualified to vote, provided that not less than a quorum are present and qualified to vote. For a variance to be granted, the Board of Zoning Appeals must make the following findings. A, there are extraordinary and exceptional conditions pertaining to the particular piece of property. B, these conditions do not generally apply to other property in the vicinity. C, because of these conditions, the application of the ordinance to the particular piece of property would effectively prohibit or unreasonably restrict the utilization of the property. And D, the authorization of a variance will not be of substantial detriment to the adjacent property or to the public good. The character of the district will not be harmed by the granting of the variance. And so that's the reading in, and then we have a couple of items that are deferred or withdrawn.
That is correct. If anybody's here for item B2, 100 Coastal Drive, that has been deferred. And item B4, 48 King Street, that has been withdrawn. Okay. And of course, we don't have the members present to vote on the item A1, the minutes of May 7th, 2025. So that will have to be deferred as well.
Correct. Now we will move on to new applications. Our first one will be B1, and that is 158 Spring Street. The TMS numbers are 46011, 02084, 085, and 088. It is zoned DR2F and LB. Request a 1-year extension to the board's approval on July 5th, 2023.
What?
It's to you now.
Okay, zone DR2F and LB. Yes, this is under our vested rights ordinance. If a development plan receives approval from this body, it's good for 2 years. In this case, the development has not progressed, so they have the right to ask for a 1-year extension, and they're entitled to up to 5 extensions. So again, this is the application for 158 Spring Street. This does not show all the TMS numbers embodied in blue, but the largest parcels indicated there. You can see that there's an access easement driveway that would lead into this vacant parcel, as well as there's a small frontage on Rosemont Street. This is the application. They asked for July. I asked, we're ready to go if they are. They said, yes, we'll shoot for the June meeting. So well in advance of the expiration date. This is the overall narrative. This is the parcels that are involved. You can see the trees that are existing and were proposed for removal. The site development plan involves a parking field and a multi-story building with some parking underneath, residential units above. A little bit of a close-up view. This is the tree list that was previously submitted. The arborist letter that was previously submitted. Pictures that were previously submitted. So item B1, these were the conditions of that prior approval. So you can see there was mitigation inches, there was the transplant 2 palms, chain link fence to be used for barricades, continue to have Bartlett tree experts manage the trees to be preserved, work with staff, arborists, and architect to reduce the encroachment into 1 tree protection zone, and then use non-hard pervious surface for parking. This was just the minutes that indicate who made the motion and the second, and it passed by a vote of 5-0. So basically, staff approves the 1-year extension, recommends a 1-year extension.
The applicant is present.
I am.
Okay. Nothing to say, right?
You need me to speak, I will, happy to.
Right. Is there anybody present that's opposed? We'll close the application to the public, be open to the board, hopefully, just for a quick motion.
Wish to approve.
A second. Motion by Kelvin, seconded by Jeff. All in favor of that motion, just say aye in favor.
Aye in favor.
Anybody opposed? That's approved. The extension's been granted. Thank you. Right. Our next item, B2 has been deferred, so we'll go to B3, which is 2815 Clements Ferry Road. TMS number is 27100022169, zone GP. Requested variance from section 54.327 to allow the removal of 6 grand trees.
This is Joan, gathering place located at the intersection of I-526 and Clements Ferry Road. This is the application for a couple of you, maybe 3 if you were present. This project was in front of this board. It's somewhat, you can almost view it as an extension of the previous approvals, but because that project kind of made a 180 and has changed the programming, it's required to come back because the board made a decision specifically on a specific development plan. But I'll go through it. This is the application. SiteCast is the engineer record on the project. This is their explanation of the hardship test. You can see that, again, they included the approval from the previous September 7th, 2022 project. This is the parcel in question. It fronts on Clements Ferry Road, the I-526 on-ramp, and then Sportsman Island Drive appears to be almost like a road, but it is actually an ingress-egress easement that takes on a street name. So this property has that easement encumbered on it. And that leads back to a boat dealership and a church and some other activity or properties. You can see that it's wooded today. You can see that it is bound by Sportsman Island, the Clemens Ferry, the on-ramp, but also Osarm Critical Area, and then also a fairly large freshwater wetland area. You can see the little pocket in the middle in which they can explain that they do have a Army Corps permit to fill. Again, here's the cover sheet for what they're calling the Atlantic. So before, and I'll go through some slides, before it was a multifamily structure with a parking deck and a mixed-use building. They've punted and are coming back with a single-family attached product, which will be the GP zoning requires that you have buildings that front on certain street types, and they have selected those street types, but they'll be private. There is some discussion of converting Sportsman Island Drive into a public way, but that has some hurdles to go through. But you can see the wetland area in which a number of the grand trees reside in. So it's a very low site. These are the trees to be removed and their photos, and then I'll show you the arborist notes on them. One B grade tree sits just outside or inside on the development side of the I-526 controlled access. Well, no, I'm sorry, the buffer that it's adjacent to I-526 on-ramp. The fence is on the property line. They're proposing to maintain that buffer. This tree had much discussion in the last approval. As you can imagine, with elevations of 3, 4, and 5, there's going to be quite a bit of fill introduced to this site to meet finished floor elevations. So, and they're looking at building a retaining wall basically at the buffer line. This is just a close-up again of the alley type street behind those units. So the front of those units will front on what will appear like a street with parallel parking, but they'll be served by the parking will be to the rear, so that road has to be built up quite a bit. These are the other trees in question. One is a staff level F. Here's the updated. Now these tree numbers may end up confusing you, but these are the updated tree numbers. They're the DBH of the trees, the species of the tree, and the grades, and then comments. So I want to just run through the previous approval just for your knowledge. At that meeting, they were proposing, you see an R on the B grade tree. They were proposing to relocate that tree. We had a tree relocation firm in that meeting, design work or urban forestry works. And some of you may recall that after a lot of discussion, it was felt that that tree, because of its existing condition in such a low-lying area, and then moving it to an area closer to the marsh, that it may not survive. So ultimately, the board ended up modifying the conditions to allow the removal of that with some pretty stiff conditions, and I'll go through those. But here's the plan when it was a parking deck wrapped with residential units and the mixed-use building far right. Again, the same trees. A lot of scarring in these trees, a lot of dead limbs because of age and lack of sunlight, storm damage, multi-stem. This was the 6/3/2022 inches and grades. So tree number 1 is tree number 2 today. This is the live oak that they were thinking that they were going to transplant. You can see this tree has very little live tissue, a lot of dead laterals just stubbed off. After a rain, it looks beautiful with the resurrection fern, but not a whole lot of green tissue to this 49-inch oak. Again, multi-stem, some damage. We, our ordinance says that if there's any 6-inch leader that is physically and visibly connected at the base, that you consider it as one tree. So hence, this is tree number 11 on today's plan, tree number 7 or on the previous.
Hey, Eric, are these new pics?
Excuse me?
These new photos? Are these?
These were
pics
photos
of
from the
Previous.
previous meeting,
Okay.
yes. Tree number 3 today. Then, just barely touching, the root flares kind of joined together. So, these were the conditions to plant 215 caliber inches of native canopy trees on the site. Obviously, it's going to be a very tight site to meet that requirement, so the residual inches could be a contribution to the city street tree program. However, the board thought long and hard about that. Particularly that B grade tree, so they must plant 2 12 to 14-inch DBH live oaks. And this company, Urban Forestry Works, has a farm in Earhart, South Carolina, in which they specialize in growing larger live oaks, and they transplant them. So they'd have to bring 2 12-inch live oaks, a total of 26 inches, from the South Carolina farm, and then apply a 2-year warranty on the transplanted trees from the date planted. Must use 4-foot chain link fences, tree protection barricades, must have a certified arborist prune and treat the trees to be preserved. And the plan, no vertical construction to impact the 50-foot landscape buffer, and it must be left undisturbed. So those were the conditions, and they stand today. So that's the staff's recommendation, is approval with those conditions.
All right, thank you, Eric. And the applicant is present.
Good afternoon. My name is Chris Donato. I'm a SiteCast. We're the engineer and landscape architects on the project. And I'm here with Lisa Howe from Middle Street, who's the owner. Thank you, Mr. Schultz, for your patience with this site. It's been very helpful because it's been going on for a long time. And we're back in front of you because of a change of use. There is one new tree because it grew a couple of tenths, which bumped it into the grand tree category. Unfortunately, on this site, the trees are really beat up. I think it's a combination just of how low the area is, and then we are dealing with base flood being in the 10-11 range on this site, and city ordinance requires us to be 2 feet above that. So now we're in the 12-13 and the ground's a 5. It's just a very challenging situation to try to keep the trees, and on top of that, the trees are pretty beat up on top of that. But I'm here to answer any questions and help any way we can.
Awesome, thank you. Is there anybody present that's opposed to this application? Anybody else present that would like to speak in favor of the application? We'll close it to the public, we'll the board.
I might add that we did not receive any written comments for this particular item as well.
All the written comment. All right, does anybody have any questions of the applicant? I think that it's pretty much the same request for the same reasons. The trees most likely have not improved.
There's an added tree.
Yeah, right,
that was
there's
my
one
question.
additional, but
Which one is that?
I am not quite sure which one's the added
Did the
tree.
grades stay the same? I mean, Eric, pretty much.
So this was the 2022 grades.
yeah, they don't. look like-
BB, I think 1B got reduced down to a, let me go back up here. A C.
The tree number 3 is the new tree. So I think it was a
24
23.8
inch live oak.
last time.
in the, so tree 3 on this plan, if we zoom in on that, Eric, or no?
Well, that was the previous plan. I'm sorry, I don't want to confuse you.
I think it's.
It's this one right here, the yellow one, the
Oh, right in the
smaller
middle.
yellow one.
Yeah, okay,
Number 3, if you can see the 3,
Yeah.
right.
in between the orange and the red.
Are these drive under, these single family units?
No, sir, because we're gonna build them up. Most of the grades, they either stayed the same or got worse, which in 2022, the arbor said they were in decline, which seems to back up what he was finding then.
So your finished floors are, you said you gotta be 10 to 12, 11 to 12.
No, sir. So the base flood is a 10 and 11 that's kind of splits the site. Finished floor is gonna be 2 feet above that. So you're in the 12, 13 range. Which makes it challenging when your site's a 5.
These are not fee simple as well, so they're under DRB review.
Did the amount of inches that was required by the board, is that based on the previous number of inches of grand trees being removed? So now if we approve it,
Should add that
it's
24.
you might want to add the additional grand tree.
So I apologize, but let me just go back. So that was tree number 3 in this
24 inches.
version. So it was a 21.8, so we considered it at grand. I guess they dropped off the 8 and now it's 24. So the 26 was the relocate, so that tree is this tree here. So I guess I considered it a double and it got approved as a grand tree then. Maybe there's more dirt or something or debris in there, so with the revisit, they now measured it at 24.
So really it was a 29.
So it
and
was,
now it's a 24.
right, so they,
So, I mean.
so those inches were included in the total.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Just Chris, do y'all know do y'all have a place for the 2 large trees? Have y'all thought about that yet?
Yes, sir. We're working through it. We haven't been through TRC yet.
You
And
think you'll be able to
Yes, sir.
accommodate those?
things tend to move. So I don't have an exact spot, but yes, sir, we feel confident we can make that happen.
Excellent. Any other further questions or discussion? Now, is there a motion?
I'll make a motion for approval with staff recommendations.
Second.
All right, so motion for approval by Jeff and seconded by Deandra. We will just say all in favor, say aye in favor.
In
Aye.
favor?
In favor, anybody opposed? Motion's approved. Unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so our next item will be item B5, which is 905 Longwood Lane.
Slide open. Allow Allison.
It's okay, so it is James Island, sorry, TMS number is 428-0000-087, zoned SR6. Request a reconsideration of staff's decision to deny the removal of 1 grand tree.
Thank you. So we're taking a trip over to James Island. This is the application for 905 Longwood Lane and their appeal to the staff's decision to deny the removal of 1 grand tree. This is the property here, zoned SR6, kind of at the end of a cul-de-sac in the neighborhood. An aerial view of the property. The tree is in the front yard. You can kind of see the shadow of it in this photo. And here's just a circle showing where the tree is located on the property. Google image street view showing this tree. And here's the arborist report that we received in the tree removal request form. I went out to inspect this tree and had the arborist report provided before I did the inspection. So assessing the tree to the city's standards for removal, I didn't find that the standards for removal were met here. So we denied the tree as it's in fine health. And the concern is predominantly the lean of the tree and concern of hazard risk. When we denied the tree, they provided a second arborist report for the submittal to the board for this evening. So this is another arborist report assessing the tree. And we've included photos from street view here that kind of show the property. In 2011, there were two water oaks in the front of this property. One was removed before it was grand. They maintained the other one, and now it's a grand tree that requires a permit for removal. Here are some additional photos that were provided in the second arborist report for this evening. These are staff's photos of the base of the tree. I thought these would be helpful to see the root flares and the kind of stability and up close view of the trunk. They do have support from the adjacent neighbor to the left of them. Staff's recommendation is to uphold the denial and suggest continuing to monitor the root plate for signs of decay or decline, and also suggest some selective pruning to reduce the weight of the canopy.
Thank you, Allison, is the applicant present?
Yes, Your Honor. Both stand up there. Just one.
Sure.
Well, I don't deny that that tree is healthy. The biggest thing is in your report, it's not completely true because that other tree wasn't removed. It
Oh.
fell against that.
Say your name, sorry,
Oh,
and
okay.
address, even though we put it, you would say.
I'm Charles Atwater, my wife is Melissa Atwater. Well, the other tree that we call a sister tree, and it's in the letter from neighbor. It fell on their house, fresh in front of the house. It was a microburst storm and it fell directly on them. Since that time, and I'm sorry, I'm a little bit nervous, but since that time, the other tree is still there. It's kind of moving more. It's the soil is kind of disturbed or it's softer now, so it's starting to fall that way or lean that way. So you want to add anything?
Well, I guess we've had three arborists
Well,
came over.
We've had
Or-
two.
Two, okay. But, I mean, I hear you say the tree's healthy, but I've also read in here too that it's declining. So, like I say, I've read it to say that it's declining, and I've also read the reports that all say that they recommend removal, of the tree. So it has a significant lean over our house. All the reports say that if it were to fall, it would be detrimental, severe, you know, and we've lived in that house many, many years, and so it's just gotten worse, and it makes us really nervous, and it makes our neighbors very
Oh, yeah,
nervous too.
definitely. Can we go back to that one picture? I think it was with maybe in the arborist report, it shows the two trees together. I don't know if you can barely see it.
In this one, like
No,
the street view?
well, it seemed like you had
This is
another
street.
one that we submitted. Anyway, it shows it, well, there it is. The two trees right there. I mean, it's pretty straight at that point. They're fine there. That microburst went, bam, it slammed it right in the house, crushing this whole side of the house right into the front door in that window. Since that time, this tree right here is gradually leaning that way. And the soil right there is disturbed, and you see the roots and all how that are. So we're not arguing about the tree. And also in the report, we offered to remediate with another tree, with I mean, live oak, whatever it's recommended. So it's not that we're trying to get rid of the tree. It's not a beautification project or landscaping. It's a safety thing for us. I mean, it could be catastrophic for our neighbor or for us. It could be death, really. So that's our main argument.
All right. Thank you. Is there anybody present that's opposed that would like to be heard? Or anybody else present that's in favor that would like to be heard? And we'll close this application to the public. We'll open it to the board for questions and discussion. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I do have a question.
All right.
Yeah.
When did the sister tree fall?
What is it, 2016? It's in the letter. Right here, back in 2016, that tree that had a sister tree located right next to it fell on top of the roof of our home, causing roof and structural damage to the exterior. The tree was much smaller than the current tree is now. And that's been, since 2016.
Thank you.
Can we confirm if it's a water oak or a laurel oak? Because the two arborist letters identify it differently.
I think it's
I identified it as a water oak.
Okay. And the first one, the sister one, was a water oak
They
as
were,
well.
they were just like, so
Do you mind going to the map? Or just which house it fell on? I'm just curious.
it fell on
Yeah,
this house right here.
Okay.
So this one went right across that way. Now, this one has developed more of a lean towards ours, but it also could be that way. And it's kind of like leaning that way, as in the picture it shows.
Is the house on your property line? Is it on your property?
Yes, on our,
You're just telling me is the tree on your property?
yeah, it's completely on. And we've gotten several quotes on this, how to handle this. I mean, I don't really want, I mean, I like the shade. I don't want a tree down, but with the concern about the lean and what can happen. And, every year I'm worried about hurricane season. I'm like, I don't know what's gonna happen. So that's what we're just trying to prevent a accident or something to happen. So if we could get it trimmed properly, we could, but I would think because a lot of it's over our house, we're gonna have just a straight stick sticking up just about. And then that would probably damage the tree more.
Eric, do you have any conditions if they are allowed to remove the tree?
So that's an interesting question, Allison. I'll step in. So it's a water oak. So what's the diameter? 24. So if they hadn't appealed our decision, the other option would have been to seek a special exception, which is a fact finding function because of the water oak is a category 3 tree. We would have gone in with what the ordinance says. It's be 50% of the DBH inches planted back on the site. But, if we were to come to the conclusion that we agreed it was hazardous, then the ordinance requires that you replant 1 2.5 inch tree on the property.
All right, so the question then, Eric, is for Allison, is it presented because it's hazardous? Because I don't think anything says the tree's hazardous.
Well,
I think one of the
the applicant is testifying that they believe the tree is hazardous.
Right. Do the arborists say hazardous?
I don't see that wording, but well.
Hazardous in a natural effect or during the convective storm, not that it's
It's-
hazardous.
It's
I
failing
think
to
that the
fall.
first report speaks a little bit more to the lean and the last line there says the impact would be high and consequences severe. I think that's kind of speaking to the hazard risk there.
Have you guys performed any pruning on the tree at all?
We have in the past. The limbs right now down by the porch, they've been pruned back all the way up to the top before.
If we were to uphold the decision, they can still come back and ask for a special exception.
They could.
Or we save the step,
That's not a problem.
or we save the step because special exception, fact finding function would be
Another
that
arborist.
arborist letter. Which says. Impact would be high and consequences would be severe. Although I think my biggest problem is when it says specimen tree appears healthy with no signs of symptoms of disease issues. So then I'm like, maybe they do need to just do some pruning. And monitor. Look at the picture where the sidewalk is. One LC took of the roof.
Yeah,
And I'm not seeing any sign of that sidewalk cracking and breaking. Whatever.
Are we closed now? Or
This is just our discussion and
Well,
questions.
I got a question about that, because it's not really concerned on that side, but this side right here. I mean, this is what's gonna be pushed over right here, so, I mean, it's
I
not.
wonder if
really-
that other tree wasn't holding that down.
Mhm.
You know, when you have those two trees, now that one's gone.
This one's showing us.
We're pretty sure it's a water oak. Cause that first report seemed pretty thorough. And, you know, in my opinion, there's a big difference between a laurel oak and a water oak.
Yeah.
Especially one with lean and cracks and some decay in it. So that was one question.
Yeah.
And then my second question was there, what's the span of time between the two reports? And do we think, has anybody tried to evaluate if the lean has changed? Because I saw in that first report,
22 degrees.
22 degrees, and then that like in one of the pictures, it looks, maybe it's just the angle of the picture, but it looks pretty leany in that one, and is it leaning more today? Or was that report pretty
These
recent?
reports are,
They were all pretty close, you know, it's been within the past couple months.
one was done when we first did the permit. The second was done with appeal.
I'd hesitate, I would err on the side of caution here. And would not want this to fall in between them getting this and special exception or the risk of that. You know. I don't want to go against the safety of that.
So, the question.
And it's a water oak.
And I think,
Which,
Right, if it's a water oak and 38 inches. It's pretty beefy, pretty big, right? That thing's run its course. Is that what I'm
I
saying?
thought it was
24.
Oh, what does that say though? DBA?
38.5, I don't know.
I measured it less than 38.
so yes, that is a very old water. I mean, you can already tell it's starting to,
Allison, what's
Maybe
your
it does in the
measurement?
bottom.
Was it like 32 or something?
I think, yeah, I can't remember off the top. I could pull up my
Yeah, that sounds-
email, but I.
So if it's that old tree water oak,
Or it's got,
you know, with pruning, then the right decision is to allow for the removal, but then we would set the replacement.
it would just be a 2.5-inch tree, because the whole reason is that it is hazardous.
I doubt where I would think.
1, 2.
One of the things I want to recommend too, is you plant another tree to replace it. We'll dress out the soil, make sure it's done properly, and and so the tree has a chance of survival and growing healthy, not in the exact spot further out.
I was about to say, you got room to push it out a little bit, right?
Well, on the front, where the sister tree was, that's where we would try to plant it. And there's azalea bushes around that, so it would be right there, but it wouldn't be right up at that point.
It does not have to go right back where that tree was.
And it
It would
doesn't
be
have to be water oak either.
10 more feet.
It shouldn't be a water oak.
So see where the second tree is, somewhere in that area. I got nervous at first, I'm sorry.
Ready to move forward. I'll make the motion to overturn the decision of the administrator and allow for the removal of the tree
Motion for
with
reversal.
staff conditions about replacement.
There a second to that motion?
Can we
With the
clarify
conditions.
there wasn't conditions recommended, but it would be 1, 2.5 based
Correct.
on a hazard tree. Okay. I'll second that.
That motion is to reverse decision and approve the removal of the tree with replacement of 1 2.5 inch caliper hardwood. All in favor of that motion?
I'm in favor.
Anybody opposed? That's approved.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
We'll be in touch.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Our next item will be item B6, which is 115.5 Wentworth Street. That PMS number is 457-0403-059 is zoned LB. Requested variance from section 54-327 to allow the removal of one protected tree.
All right, so we're back downtown at 115.5 Wentworth Street. This is the application for the removal of one protected tree. This is the property in question. An aerial image here has a surface parking lot surrounding it. This is a street view of the property. This building used to be used for the Grace Church offices, I believe. And local business Baba's is coming in to occupy the space, and in their renovations, they'll be revitalizing this building, improving the landscaping. The kind of area between these two buildings in that little alley is where the subject tree is located. It's all the way kind of in the back, near the back of the building. This is a survey of the property. We have a better close-up image here. So on the survey, it was identified as a 10-inch beech tree, but when I went out to inspect, I identified it as a 10-inch live oak. Commercial properties are required to maintain 15 protected trees per acre. So this property, I think it has to maintain maybe 2 protected trees per acre, and they're going to be removing the 9-inch popcorn, an invasive species. We can permit for removal. The 6-inch beech doesn't require a permit, but the removal of the 10-inch live oak would require a permit. And since they are below the 15 protected tree requirement, that's why it's before you tonight. Here are the building plans kind of showing the renovations to happen for this structure. You can see on the left side of the building, they'll be providing a patio, which is where I believe the mitigation trees are planned to be planted. With the kind of right side of the building being used for like mechanical storage and stair access as a second means of ingress and egress on that rear portion of the building. And where the live oak is located is where they would like to place those stairs. Again, there's the proposed patio and proposed cafe and shows locations of the trees. They did provide an arborist report evaluating the 10-inch live oak. He noted that growing up against the building, this tree's canopy is very kind of up in the air and doesn't have much room to grow out. Here's a photo of the trunk. So this is kind of from the rear side of the building. It's kind of difficult to get a good photo of this tree just because of the positioning and the buildings surrounding it. I also included these two photos that staff took. You can see the canopy of this live oak here above the building, and the trunk of it there. So the mechanical equipment would be planned to be moved to this side of the building, in between. Staff's recommendation is for approval with replacement of 10 caliper inches of protected trees on the property. It must provide a landscape plan for staff's review and approval.
Excellent. Thank you. Allison is the applicant present. State your name and address for the record.
Hey, my name is Edward Kraus. My wife and I just purchased this building and are the owners of Baba's. Our home address? Or any address,
Any
115 Wentworth, or 115 and a half currently. I think everything was explained pretty clearly. Are there additional questions?
We'll get to that point. Is there anybody
Oh,
present
okay.
that's opposed? Or anybody else present that'd like to hear? If you don't have anything to add, we'll close the public portion. We'll go to our discussion.
Yeah, I think the only thing, only two things are that they're all voluntary trees. I don't understand enough about kind of the perspective of the BZA or BAR to know if that's good or bad from the city's perspective. And the only other thing is where that one is specifically, but also the staircase in front underneath the popcorn, or I guess what would be above the popcorn tree, are both the two egresses from the fire marshal. Which I guess that would be a different conversation for a different board, but appreciate it. Thank you guys for taking the time.
Thank you. We'll close this application to the public. We open to the board for questions or discussion.
Is there a site plan that shows open space? Wondering where you put it.
There's three little greens on the left, I think, are the,
Those would be proposed
courtyard.
trees.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because right now I think that's just asphalt along that side.
They're suggesting 3-inch. Would we have a minimum? Like 2.5?
The 10 inches is derived by a protected tree requires 2.5 inch trees per protected tree removed.
And there's two protected trees removed. No, just one.
Just the one.
Just
We staff level approve popcorn and then some
That was under.
Was
under 8-inch lanthus and some other ligustrum.
No, that's a Dahoon hop or Eagleston holly. Doesn't really canopy tree, but one of the other comments was provide a landscape plan, so maybe that would be probably addressed.
Yes.
Probably want something with a canopy being above outdoor seating too.
Okay.
You go to the conditions. The 10 inches of replacement. But if it would be 2.5 per protected tree, we're only removing one protected tree.
Right.
That'd be 2.5.
Yes.
5.
Yeah. 5 inches, I guess. I'm sorry, yeah. 5 more. Did I type that?
No, I typed
You got
that.
it.
I thought it.
Is
One-
it the position of the stairs that are causing the removal of the tree?
Yes.
Yes, and I think the kind of overall plan of having the mechanical equipment relocated to this side of the building. Both.
I would also say that it's a live oak, like right next to a
Right,
building,
right.
like that we all know how big they get.
Yeah, it's only gonna create more and more issues and problems. That's why nobody would have planted it there, I don't think. So, all right, so is there any other questions or?
Can we repeat the conditions, maybe the revised conditions?
So the revised conditions would be must plant 5 caliper inches of replacement trees, sorry. And provide a landscape plan for staff review and approval.
For that.
Condition, yay? Yes.
Motion for approval?
Yep, that's the one.
All right. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, so we've got motion for approval by Deandra and a second by George. All in favor of that motion?
I in favor.
I in favor. Anybody opposed? One opposed. That is approved. 4-1. Kelvin was opposed. It's approved. Thank you. That'll get us to our final item on the agenda is item B7, which is 336 Blowing Fresh Drive. The TMS number 26904011116, zone PUD. Request an after the fact variance from section 6 of the PUD document to allow a retaining wall to encroach into a 20-foot critical line buffer.
So we're going up to Wando Village. This is the application for the after the fact retaining wall. Their narrative addressing the variance test. The subject property is obviously along the critical line and requires a critical line buffer. The Wando Village PUD requires a 20-foot critical line buffer with a 10-foot building setback. This is the property pre-development or pre-home on it. This is during the construction of the home. Street view image. This is a site plan showing the original location of the critical line. So this house was approved and the critical line was valid at that time that the house was approved. Sometime during the house's construction, the retaining wall was also built without a retaining wall permit. It was discovered by one of the engineering inspectors and came to us to address the situation. So when they applied for the permit, it was unfortunate timing as the critical line certification was no longer valid. You'll note it was dated 11/18/19, so that expired 11/18/2024. And so in that time, they had to get the critical line recertified by a CDS. And after the retaining wall was already built, the critical line had moved. So this site plan shows the new location of the critical line certified by SCDS on 3/12/2025. So now, although the retaining wall was built outside of the critical line buffer, as the critical line has moved, it is now within the buffer, which cannot be approved at staff level, which is why this is in front of you today as an after the fact approval for encroachment into the buffer zone.
All right, thank you.
Here's some additional photos to give you an idea of the elevation in the site. Staff's recommendation is for approval. Must provide a robust landscaping plan for staff review and approval in the submittal for the retaining wall permit. The landscaping must be native and salt tolerant, and plantings are to be evenly dispersed across the 20-foot critical buffer line, including above and below the wall.
All right, thank you. The applicant present. Is there anybody opposed to this application?
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Allison. You did a great job explaining. I'm Justin Smith on behalf of the applicant. She explained it very well. Nothing, in malice here, just kind of unfortunate with the timing and the misstep with the permitting. So just trying to do what's right. Obviously, we're, in a vulnerable spot here, trying to do what's right. But I, open to your recommendation and do what we can to make it right. Obviously, we don't own this, it's owned by a, resident homeowner. So we would take this back to them and, just, explain to them that that's the recommendation of the board. And then do what we can to submit that as an application for retaining wall.
All right, thank you.
Sure, thank you.
I'll close the application to the public and be open to the board for discussion. Can we see the photos, the great photos?
Yeah.
The house is finished, it's been sold and someone's
got
in it.
Yes. Are you?
Someone's in it. You're about to get some landscaping. Um, all right.
So
So the process was, I guess, house was under construction. Y'all did not apply for the retaining wall, built the retaining wall. And then someone noticed retaining wall, said, hey, you're supposed to get a permit for that, and the critical line moved.
But that plat did show a retaining wall on it. Now, it may not be, that may not have been the intent, was to permit it. It was shown.
It was not on there
Oh, it was not.
on
Okay,
the
it's drawn
submittal
out.
for the new single-family home permit.
And is there a wall that continues on past other neighbors on there? It's just,
Yes, sir, behind this camera, if you will.
it goes to the next lot as well.
And you guys are recommending plantings
Above and below.
up, so, because you're also not supposed to have sod in the critical buffer.
So it's kind of a interesting case here. That the PUD document requires a 20-foot OCR critical climb buffer. But then when the subdivision came through preliminary plating and road construction, the engineer of record declared the buffer also to be a BMP for stormwater purposes. And so we've had a lot of issues in Wando Village with people encroaching, removing stuff. So some extra eyes are up there. The engineering inspector brought this to our attention, but so we actually walked pretty much the entire perimeter at one point with, I guess, the previously platted OCR critical line and the 20-foot buffer staked out to identify who was in violation of certain things. But but it's got restricted covenants that speak to that it's a water quality BMP as well as a visual buffer.
Yeah, we did confirm that in terms of so when the critical line moves, the critical line buffer moves, the BMP does not move.
I mean, the 20 feet is there. It's just where this magical or the edge of the marsh line is. I was thinking about, keep the wall there, keep the fill in place. Do you beef up the landscaping below it and the buffer line? I mean, I kind of agree with taking the side out, but I don't know what good planting marsh plants up at that 3-foot level is gonna.
Well, they wouldn't necessarily have to be marsh plants. They could be just
Something
natives.
tolerant, yeah.
Natives.
So maybe
Native grasses.
Yeah.
water comes all the way up.
on that
To the
wall, yeah.
I don't know, it seems, so if you go back to the picture of the property.
This one?
Yeah, so. I think there's, like, if I own the house, I'd be like, well, I don't want plants in my backyard. I like the way my backyard is. But now I'm being told I gotta accept plants in my backyard for something I didn't create. And somebody didn't tell me could possibly happen. I mean, is it opening up an issue between y'all? I mean, you know what I'm saying? Cause I'd say, yeah, well, if it's my house, I like to be able to be on my little deck and step out and enjoy. And now all of a sudden there's gonna be plants that are growing whatever height. And so if I'm using that ground level patio, I've purchased something that no longer is what the vision was. That's not our purview.
What's the condition you want to include?
Yeah, ask. Okay, is that okay?
No, unless there's well,
That's fine.
so, yeah, no, right.
I'm sorry, it's a recommendation.
But, I'm not, I guess, well, look, I will have a question. When was the wall built? What month, what year? Was it built
It was,
before November of 2024?
it was, yes, sir. It was prior to the expiration of the 5-year.
Right. So I guess the way I look
In
at it is
theory.
it was built in a place that
Would
it
have
should
been
have been,
permitted, it would have been in the right place.
which means that, yeah, that critical line was preserved and the buffer for the critical line was preserved. It's just that now change this. I mean, that wall is fine, keep the wall. I guess, yes, plant.
Okay. In theory, you should have this 20-foot strip, this landscaped and buffered and or more natural conditions, right? But the lawn is there. I think maybe more of the plantings below the wall.
Thinking,
I mean, the critical lines gonna keep moving. So I don't see the reason to make them put something in their backyard. And it would have, had it gotten the permit initially, it would have been proper.
And I think the intent of the rule, no sod in the critical line setback is not having sod roll right up to the critical line, not when there's a retaining wall there. Yeah,
right, because
I think it would look odd to plant up on top of the wall.
It also seems like this house is a lot closer to
Well, pinch point right there.
versus if you're looking down, there's a lot more.
it's further down and yards get much deeper.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good.
There's not an issue with the other neighboring lot. I guess that one didn't come up.
So if you go back to the plat,
Yeah.
Allison, there's like a little finger that.
Right.
Oh,
the
it
property
peels
line,
away, got
yeah.
it.
Mhm.
I got you. Okay.
Well, the recommendation doesn't say above or below the wall, does it? It just
That's
does.
both.
Okay, it does. Okay.
You can amend the recommendation.
I mean, if you go back to the survey again, that showed the. Yeah, that one, I guess, wow, something that's going on over here can be nice and attractive, but.
Not at
This-
that point,
Yeah,
yeah.
that would be tough and something over here.
That's under the house.
I can see some landscaping being put in select places.
So there's not a density or planning requirement for the buffer, right? It's just
No,
native.
we brought it through road construction that it was
Supposed to be
really
undisturbed, right?
undisturbed, right?
Yeah, okay. So I was thinking of like a way to plus up the planning in there, but
The type L buffer typically would have been 25 foot if this hadn't gone PUD, and then a 10 foot. And then there's like do's and don'ts of what you do in an OCR and critical line buffer. Basically, you can trim existing shrubs down to be 3 feet in height. The protected trees stay. You can get your access to your water dependent structure. But otherwise, I think it was, I can't recall specifically, but I think it was pretty much, they set the silt fence at the critical line buffer. Yeah, and
This image shows
yeah, you
like
can see how
where
they,
that
then
silt fence was installed.
Right.
For the initial clearing.
Yep.
I think the landscape plan for staff to review works. And staff just looking at where that landscaping would be, not in that pinch point.
It doesn't need to cover.
well, it's not the
The
length
whole,
of the
it
wall,
can be
but it could be a combination.
parsed within it and just approved by staff.
Should we update if we went with an approval to modify the condition? It doesn't need to be evenly across.
I'll take a shot at that. I make a motion for approval with staff recommendations amended such that the salt tolerant plantings be dispersed and can be above and below, or should be both above and below the wall, but do not need to be the entire length of the wall. Can be tucked in the corners. I've already messed this up on the high side.
Got that?
I got it.
Does not need to span the entire.
Does not need to span the entire length, but, and the planning plan approved by staff.
Read it.
I think I got it.
Okay, all right.
We recorded this, right?
So, all right, so there is a motion
I'll second
by
it.
Jeff, and it's been seconded. And we'll just say all in favor of that motion.
I in favor.
Any opposed? That motion is approved unanimously. Thank you.
Okay, I have a question. If the retaining wall is here like this, can the plantings not be behind the house? Can they be,
That's what we said, is that
that's what you can do?
plantings on the high side could be off to the sides, the low side probably stays evenly
I say
dispersed.
probably the majority of your plantings will be in that on the
on the
low side.
On the low side?
And just maybe a couple of pockets on the high side.
Still want you to have access around to maneuver around your.
Because I mean, that little, that's our yard.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Eric, so what do I do on this? Doesn't look like there's anywhere for me to sign.
Okay.
Do I need to read